it's a double master's degree. So you get 2 master's degree for what you do. So my first year was in KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden, in Stockholm. Second year was in Grenoble ANP NC in France. So my second. So my first year was in energy engineering, and my second year was in electrical engineering for smart grids and buildings. So as you can see, I've jumped from mechanical engineering to energy engineering to electrical engineering. So I'm all across the board, and so I know bits of everything, and I try to learn and try to advance my knowledge in one of the fields at a time. And of course, solar falls in all three. So, actually, my focus was sustainability and how to make energy systems more optimized, more efficient, and better performing. So, yes, that's pretty much what my course and my subjects that I took up focused on.
Yeah. I think it is very good, and then that shift is not a major one considering your age and the the studying age, right? Because it's a lot better than some people like us who will out of midlife crisis we change the industry, right? So that learning is always there as long as the it's interest driven. So definitely very good. Hmm. So how is the situation in India with respect to this? Not a domestic one, generally, even though commercial.
Uh, Actually, India is one of the key focuses right now. If you go abroad, they pretty much talk about India a lot. In the last 4 to 5 years, I think we've pushed forward in terms of sustainability. So the government has set up a really big target. It's very ambitious, as many people say it. But we were pushing forward until Corona hit us. So even during Corona, we actually installed 1 gigawatt of solar power. So even during the lockdown, work was going on in certain places. So as you can see, 1 gigawatt is not a small number, but of course, we are very close. We're not close, but we have 37 gigawatts of solar power already installed in India. And actually, if you take into account Karnataka alone, we have more solar and wind power installed compared to Denmark as a country.
Oh,
So even though Denmark is actually running on free electricity at this moment because of renewable energy, Karnataka has hit more in terms of installation. So I think our target is 175 gigawatts for Karnataka, which is much, much more than Denmark or Germany combined.
oh, that's
So when we talk about sustainability, of course, there's a long way to reach, but there's a lot of research projects happening in Pondicherry, Coimbatore, North India. There's a lot in terms of reaching electricity to J&K. So India has a lot of focus, but of course we need to look into details and see how it's reaching.
okay. And how is the traction when it comes to the domestic usage? Just
Actually, there is an awareness problem right now happening. So, industries and commercial utility scales have installed much more than individual residents. So that is something of an awareness problem. People are not realizing that solar PV is actually something like an investment, not somewhere it's only ecology. So it's something like I think you've watched the recent Harshad Mehta show called Scam 1992, and he says risk hai to I mean risk hai to ishq hai. So this is a different situation. This is not about risk. This is something guaranteed.
okay.
And for sure, we have some numbers that show that actually you can end up making more profits or earnings through solar PV than bank interest. I'll show that during the slides, of course.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that was interesting because return on investment, what you would have thought 5 years back, is improved a lot now. I mean, the ROI is much faster.
Uh,
So
they
we
around 5 years back,
hmm,
each panel had a cost of 35 rupees per watt. Now it's come down to 21 rupees per watt.
right.
So when you multiply that into 5,000 watts or maybe a utility scale of 10 power 6 watts, which is 10 lakh watts, you're seeing a huge drastic reduction.
Right, right, right. Okay, just give me a minute. So I think it's time. Let's start. So welcome all. Until you all joined, we were just having a casual chat. So we have Siddharth Shetty, who is a young entrepreneur from Lakeshore Homes, who has finished his master's and who has started his company, who are into installation of the solar PV, I believe both for residential and commercial as well. And in LSH, if you have seen many houses, at least a couple of them have opted for solar power, right? You know, to convert the thermal energy into the electricity. And it's always good to know what is happening latest in that field and what are the mode of transferring. I mean, will I be directly be able to use what I generate, or should I push it to the grid? There are a lot of questions in mind. So today Siddharth is with us to take up all our questions and emphasize more on how the installation can be carried out and what is the investment required and what is the return on investment period that we can keep in mind and so on. So I think, yes. So I think, hi Gordon. We were waiting for you to join before starting the call.
I was thinking of sharing, then I
Good, good. Okay. So over to you, Siddharth. We don't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity, all present here of Lakeshore Homes. Today, I want to show you what potential we have in terms of solar PV rooftop for the residents of Lakeshore Homes. And of course, outside Lakeshore Homes, there's still a lot of potential. So we'll talk about how it works, the technical aspects, applications, and what things you should look out for. So this initiative is tailored by my company, Untitled Chapter. I completed my double master's degree in from Europe. I have it in energy engineering, electrical engineering, and my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. So let's move forward. And so the agenda today is eco. So when I say eco, some people think a seesaw balance between ecology and economy. So what I want to push forward is you are about to hit two birds with one stone. So you can strike two birds with one stone through the solar PV. So a bit about carbon footprint savings. Let's talk about ecology first because that's the need of the hour. So if you invest in a 10 kilowatt solar PV project, you're looking at saving nearly 18 tons of carbon dioxide in a year. 18 tons, it's huge. But whereas if you invest the same amount in a bank FD, it does nothing. It sits in the bank. That's all it does. So what does 1 ton of CO2 look like? Everyone talks about 1 ton of CO2. So this is what 1 ton of CO2 actually is. It's one huge gigantic balloon. So if you're looking at an individual resident who is probably installing 10 kilowatt, he's saving 18 of these balloons. And look at our population as India, 1 billion people. So 1 billion into 18, huge number and huge number of balloons that we can save. So let's talk about economy too. The installation that I'm talking about is a new technology. We will move on to show how it works. And the break-even point for it is generally 4.5 to 5.5 years. The bigger the system gets, you actually break even within 3 years sometimes. After which, you're actually getting returns on zero investment because you no longer have to keep that money anywhere. You are just getting returns. So what we have to take into account is careful designing such that your generation of energy meets your consumption. So in year one, suppose you are taking these amounts that I'm showing, which is 2 lakh 50,000, 3 lakh 50,000, and 5 lakh 50,000, and you're putting it in the bank FD. So right now your FD rate is actually 5.5% to 6% at max, but I want to show you the best situation of what happens with bank FD. So suppose you're getting 7%. Your returns are actually in year one, 17,500 for 2 lakh 50,000, 24,500 for 3 lakh 50, and for 5 lakh 50, it is just 38,500. But now suppose we install a 3 kilowatt solar PV solution, which costs about 2 lakh 50,000. Your first year, you're going to get 40,000 rupees as your earnings or your savings or profit or returns. So your ROI rate is not just 7% or 6% anymore, it's 16%. Now 5 kilowatt is where you install 3 lakh 50,000 and you get a return of 66,000. And that ROI rate is 20%. Let's move on to 10 kilowatt, a savings of 90,000 easily in year one. And I'm actually showing you very conservative figures when it comes to 3 kilowatt, but when I show bank values, it's actually exaggerated. So the ROI rate for 10 kilowatt is at least 16%. So let's move on and actually I'll show you how this works. So first, I think I'll take less than 40 minutes to talk about my company and some words about the technology. And then let's throw in some fun and talk about economics and how the techno-economics works. And then the key takeaways for us as Lakeshorians. We can do a lot more, at least 20 or more than that minutes for some question and answers that I could answer for you. So company profile, Sun Power Systems has the motto of providing energy independence for all. So we aim to provide reliable solutions that are performing. When we say solar panels, it should work for 25 years. Some people just think 5, 10 years, but no, this project works for 25 years. We talk about excellent performance and also economic viability. We do not compromise on either. And we ensure that the solution that we provide is tailored to the need of the customer and not just exaggerated or under-designed. So what do we do? The products and services that we offer. So solar PV power plant, supply, installation, and commissioning. So from A to Z, we provide the solution. So the interference from the customer is just a signature in most cases. The second thing that we do is supply components to third-party megawatt scale integrators. Then we have technical consulting, EPC, solar lighting solutions, and CCTV and surveillance and networking solutions. So some of the brands, the companies that we work with when it comes to solar PV panels or modules, as you call, Renewsys is a popular company based out of Hyderabad. Vikram Solar is an older company which is based out of Calcutta. And then there's Longi, which provides high power solutions, high power wattage panels. And then solar inverters, we have Delta, which is one of the best brands, top performing brands when it comes to solar on-grid inverters across India. Then we have Hitachi, the popular Japanese brand, and Glow Power being the OEM for Luminous, Schneider Electric, ABC, and Tata. And they specialize in off-grid inverters. So I'd like to tell you first about the solar PV technology itself. So some of the customers or the people that we talk about when we say solar solution or solar PV solution, the first thing they say is, yeah, I already have it. And then we ask them what size is it? And then they say it's just 2 panels. And then we figure out it's actually the solar water heater. This is a different solution, works on a complete different aspect, which is thermal energy. Whereas solar PV works on light energy, the sunlight. So the visible light is converted into electricity in case of solar PV. And solar PV is something that works better in lower temperatures, whereas solar water heater works with higher temperatures. So above 55 degrees Celsius, you actually see the performance of a solar PV panel dipping. But below that performs extremely, extremely well. So why Bangalore? We live in Bangalore and you can see the details. This is taken from a software. It gives at least a minimum of 4 hours of sunlight every day, minimum, and can go up to 7. So in some months, I'm pretty sure we reach up to 9 to 10 hours, but of course, let's take the conservative value of being 4 hours. So what does 4 hours actually translate into? So when we say 1 kilowatt or 1 unit, it means 1 kilowatt hour. So 1 kilowatt into 1 hour. So 1 hour of sunshine on 1 kilowatt of panels provides 1 unit. So with 4 hours every day, we could generate 4 units daily, 120 units monthly, and nearly 1,500 units yearly. So you can imagine the scale of how big amount of energy it actually generates. So why solar power again? Independence, and it provides energy security. You have the possibility of zero energy bills. If you have excess power, you can supply it to the grid and generate revenue through it. Also, you're insulated from yearly BESCOM tariff hikes, which is happening almost year on year nowadays. So I think recently you saw the newspaper which said BESCOM wants to increase at least almost 2 rupees per unit. 2 rupees per unit is actually almost 10 to 13% of income in terms of things. This is huge, and you can imagine 10% increasing every year on your electricity bills in a long term. What is the ecological side? You have lower carbon footprint, eco-friendly society, and increase in sustainability index. So actually today we had a call for a site visit from one more community in Bangalore who was looking to make their society completely green. So it runs on completely solar power. So they were looking for a 100 kilowatt solution. Now, when we talk about Lakeshore, there is a huge potential for this. So I will show you how that works through the course of this slide. So as you can see, you can strike two birds with one stone: ecology and economy. So a little bit of the technology itself. You have two types of solar PV systems: on-grid and off-grid. So the off-grid is, I think, some of you are most familiar with. So the solar energy strikes the panels and generates DC current, which goes to an off-grid inverter. This charges a battery bank, and generally a huge number of batteries are taken into account. And once it is full and charged, it discharges through the inverter to the demand, which is your house. So nowadays, these inverters have advanced a bit, and you can also run it through the grid. So this is grid independent. So it can run with or without the grid. So there is no requirement of grid for this. And it provides backup. So let's talk about the features and significance of this system. It uses a battery bank. It provides battery during backup during power cuts. Suppose you have 2 days of cloudy weather, you're still less impacted. So it's grid independent also. Have a grid, don't have a grid, works. Downsides are this: batteries are expensive. Nowadays, lead is being harder and harder to find as a resource. And it's going to make the technology more and more expensive over a period of time. Battery performance degrades over time. So we give a warranty of 5 years, but generally within the fifth and the sixth year, you will have to replace it. So hence, you will have recurring battery replacement. Battery banks can also be charged from the grid. You're only partially insulated from BESCOM tariff hikes. Excess power that you generate may be unutilized, completely wasted. It's a slightly older technology and has a longer ROI period because of the recurring battery replacement. But now let's talk about the newer technology, which is on-grid solar PV system. So the solar power, which is in DC, goes to an on-grid inverter and goes directly to your BESCOM meter. We install something called as a net meter, which is a bi-directional meter. You can be an exporter or an importer in this case. So what happens first is your demand, which is your house load. So it goes to your house first. So once your load is satisfied at your house, the excess energy goes to the grid. So what happens in case your demand is too high? It imports from the grid. So this meter can go both ways. It can go to the left, it can go to the right, depending on whether you're an importer or an exporter. So suppose you're generating 20 units of energy every day, or suppose during the day you generate 20 units, and in your house you're using only 3 units during the day. So you use 3 units for your house and 17 units goes to the grid. Now, during the night, you do not generate any solar energy, solar power. So what happens is you use, suppose, another 3 units in your house. So it imports from the grid. So what happens on a net total, you're a net exporter of 14 units. So for that 14 units, you get a return from the Bescom. So what are the significance and features of it? Of actually the net metering, which plays a significant role, is that you're grid tied or grid connected. You have a zero electricity bill possibility. You have 25 years of power purchase agreement with Bescom. It's guaranteed and Bescom cannot violate it or anyone cannot violate it. It's fixed. You're completely insulated from Bescom tariff hike. So if they increase 10% or 20%, it does not affect you in any way. You have returns on excess power that you generate. It's a shorter ROI period, roughly 4 years. Smaller the system, 4 to 5 years. Bigger the system, 3 to 4 years. Advanced technology. And some of you might be industrial owners here, and I wanted to emphasize on this point where if you have a DG, you can synchronize with it. So it's a one-time investment, and you synchronize with your DG, and your usage of diesel is completely reduced. So you can run on solar power even during blackouts. Sorry. So it requires also a reference voltage from the grid. So an overview comparing the two systems is that the major component difference in off-grid is that it uses a battery bank. The recurring investment is primarily on the battery bank when it comes to off-grid. Standard inverter warranty from the company, not from a dealer or anyone, from a company, is that on-grid inverters have a longer warranty, which is 5 years in case of on-grid, and off-grid it is 2 years because it's heavier duty because it uses more input, which is a grid, solar power, and battery, and on the output, your load. The ROI period for on-grid is roughly 4.5 to 5.5 years, the newer technology, whereas the older technology had 7 to 8 years. Insulation from Bescom tariff hikes is complete in case of on-grid and partial in off-grid. And surplus power is fed to the grid in on-grid and off-grid is unutilized. So let's not say that one is better than the other, but it's a context or perspective that's of importance. Whereas when we take into account places like Bangalore and lakeshore homes, urban areas, the grid reliability is high and on-grid works a lot better. But when you take into account suburban areas, rural areas where there is high amount of power cuts, it's good to go for an off-grid system. So for the lakeshorians here, I would suggest going for an on-grid system. So let's throw in some numbers and see the fun of it. So I was recommended to take a case study, and let's take a residential load of a standard lakeshore home, which is about 3 BHK. And the appliances that you generally have is an air conditioner, sometimes more than one. Hot water geyser could be more than one. 2-3 televisions, 2-3 PCs, laptops, a refrigerator at the minimum, pump or a motor for your overhead tank, a washing machine, an iron box. So your general sanction load is around 3 kilowatts, sometimes 5, but generally 3. And your monthly consumption is between 300 and 350 units, whereas the monthly bill comes up to about 2,800 rupees. So have you noticed this? Suppose you have a small inverter or a UPS at home, you switch on the iron box and then the UPS trips, or you switch on a high power load and the UPS trips. So what can happen if you install a 3 kilowatt solar PV rooftop solution? It generates between 360 to 400 units, or sometimes up to 540 units if it's a good summer month. The panel dimensions is about 2 meter by 1 meter. And for a 3 kilowatt system, you require around 8 to 9 panels, and the total area required is 330 square feet. So investment wise, you're looking at on-grid being slightly more expensive and the off-grid being slightly lesser expensive. But what happens is this is the lower limit that we're providing, which is just 4 batteries. So the backup that you're getting is about only 2.5 hours. So we generally recommend going for 8 batteries, which is giving a backup of 4 hours. In case of on-grid, you can connect to all kinds of load because you connect externally through the meter. So whatever your grid is connected to, the solar PV is connected to. But in case of off-grid, you can only use lights, TVs, and at the max, a refrigerator. So in case you switch on your iron box, I'm pretty sure your inverter is going to trip. The Bescom bill can be zero in on-grid, whereas in off-grid, you still get a minimal amount. returns from DESCOM exist on-grid because you have a PPA, whereas in off-grid it's zero. So the monthly returns you're looking at is nearly rupees 4,000, and in on-grid and off-grid, your actual earnings is just 2,000 rupees. So yearly, you're saving up to 48,000 rupees in case of on-grid, which is actually highly valued. So a bit about the recurring investment that you're going to find when you go for off-grid is that each battery, being an end customer, you're going to face GST of 28%. So you're looking at every 5 years investing another 60,000 rupees or up to 1 lakh rupees in case of 200 AH batteries. The ROI period in case of on-grid is just 4.5 to 5.5 years, following which you're actually getting returns on zero investment. Whereas in off-grid, even if you break even in the 7th to 8th year, following which in the 10th year, you will again have to pay for the batteries and replace them. So I did some numbers game here, and I wanted to show you how actually it is beneficial for people to invest in SPV, which is solar PV, rather than a bank FD. So I've put these numbers here, which show the bank yearly earnings, and you can see the SPV yearly earnings for a 3 kilowatt is substantially huge compared to a bank interest rate. So let's assume you're breaking even only in the 5th year for the 3 kilowatt system. After that, you're seeing a sharp, so you've broken even in the 5th year, recovered all your investment, and following the 5th year, you're actually making a huge earnings or profits, or whatever term you like to hear. You could be making earnings, profits, returns, which is substantially much larger than the bank interest. Generally, I think by general knowledge, by the 12th year is when your bank FD doubles. But in case of solar PV, it's the 8th year. So solar PV shows much better prospects compared to investing the same amount in bank FD. Your actual inflation rate is around 10% yearly, but what I've considered here is actually just 5%. And the bank interest rate is actually 5.5%, but I've shown it as 7%. So I've taken a conservative look on SPV and exaggerated look on bank FD, but you're still seeing the SPV showing better.
Papa would have joined with video.
When you see the 5 kilowatt, it's the same graph that you see. So you can see here in the 25th year, you're making nearly a lakh more than your bank earnings. So that's a huge number, right? For all of us here, that's a huge number. So let's move on to the ecological analysis. India as such produces most of its electricity using coal and other non-conventional forms of fuel, which is fossil fuels. So we generate about 0.82 kilograms of CO2 emissions per unit generated. So that's huge. This is a 2018 number, which now may shift to 0.79 or 0.84 in that range. So actually what happens is with a 3 kilowatt system, you're saving at least 5 tons of CO2 a year. Each resident can save up to 5 tons of CO2 a year, which can translate to 132.5 tons of CO2 saved by the end of the project, which is 25 years. And that's actually not the end. Sometimes solar PV run up to 30 years, and in case you're saving a lot more. So the key takeaways that I would recommend you to focus on is, if you're going below 3 kilowatt, we suggest off-grid. But if you're going above 3 kilowatt, go for an on-grid. And why we say that is because off-grid makes use of a bulky battery bank. When you say battery bank, it can heat up, it is very expensive, performance degradation, recurring investment, pushes your ROI period by a huge margin. So here I've put up some numbers for your reference. Generally, we don't recommend people just going by the numbers itself. We like to do a study and find out what your consumption is, find a solution that works for you. But up to 450 units, we go by the number that you invest in 3 kilowatt solar PV, which requires up to 330 square feet. Whereas if you are 750 units and above, we say go for a 10 kilowatt or sometimes more. So there are different types of solar panels also available. Some of them very efficient, some of them slightly lesser. So there's 380 watt and above, which is called mono PERC. and 330 watt, which is polycrystalline. So the polycrystalline has lower efficiency compared to the mono PERC having nearly 20% efficiency. So for the lake shorens here, generally I think we have a sanction load of 3 kilowatt per house. So go for install an on-grid system of 3 kilowatt or more. Why? You can forget your electricity bill for at least 25 years. If we design correctly and we ensure that your production matches your consumption, you are sure to forget your electricity bill for 25 years. If, in case you produce more than you consume, you get 4 rupees per unit from Bescom. Right now it is 3.99 rupees per unit, and that is what it translates to. You can earn more returns than interest in a bank FD. So instead of keeping in the FD, which probably takes 12 years to double, you're looking at it doubling in 8 years in solar PV. And additionally, you're being more sustainable. So you're making a good future for the next generation. Guaranteed power purchase agreement with Bescom. So that's for 25 years. So whether it inflates, it does not matter and it does not affect you. This is the right time to invest. Actually, why we are saying this, it's not in specific because I joined solar PV right now, but following some analysis that I think you would have heard, the central government is looking at least government and more governance. This implies actually decentralization of the whole system. So when you look at discoms becoming more decentralized, you're actually seeing them being able to charge as the amount that they want. And additionally, if they are looking at charging you during different periods of the day, they could charge you a lot in the 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. gap. So they might charge you 10 rupees per unit, 20 rupees per unit during peak loads. So solar PV insulates you completely against that using the PPA. So in case of backup power as your focus, we generally say we can supply you with a home UPS, which can give you a really good backup. So some of you might have had the rooftop gardening community session earlier, and we do not want to go anything against that because it's something that's really amazing. What we can do is making it very compatible with it. So we can make an elevated structure above it, which provides shade and also a certain amount of sunlight. We generally prefer a sloping towards south orientation. Sloping or flat roof is not a problem. We can accommodate. Elevated structures for these rooftop gardening, or if you want to make a sit out, a leisure area where you can make a nice cozy room, or maybe a nice gaming area, anything as such you can make under it, and we can make that solution compatible with your requirement. Some of you being commercial complex owners or industrial owners, this has huge potential for saving a lot of money. Your energy bill can come from what you're spending about 1 lakh to 2 lakh rupees per month, can come down to complete zero by just installing and breaking even within the third to fourth year. So why consult us? We give a free consultation and we ensure that the solution is tailored for each customer. It's not about a blanket solution. It is about looking at the needs and ensuring that they get maximum returns. So there's a zero EB bill possibility. We ensure reliability, trust, and ethics, and ensure there is excellent performance of our solutions. Customers are all about long-term relationships. This is a 25-year project, and we are here through all of it. We provide hassle-free assistance, and being in Lakeshore, I'm pretty sure, if you want to congratulate us on making a good project, or if you have any problem, all you need to do is knock on the door of 131 or call up in case of Corona. So there is no problem at all. We provide end-to-end solutions with single point of contact for the customer. And when it comes to on-grid solutions, we're looking at just a signature from you for the PPA purposes. The rest, we take care of it. So this is generally the price that we offer. Of course, we have slightly reduced it for the Lakeshore Homes purpose because we hope that we get a lot of inquiries at least. So you can look at this as the price band that's generally there for a good quality product with a good brand and a solution that lasts 25 years. Some of you may ask why the GST rate is 8.9%. It's because 70% of your new invoice value is charged at 5% and the 30% of the invoice value is charged at 30%. So number of phases is something you also need to take into account. Generally, I would say single phase is what we require. But in case we are also installing for a resident of our layout with a 10 kilowatt system, which is 3-phase. And the solution has amazing mono PERC panels which provide 435 watts per panel. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, you can surely ask me or email us. The email ID is provided, number, and also our website. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Siddharth. We do have some questions. Would somebody like to speak? Okay. Yeah. So we do have some questions in the chat. Before that, can you please go back to the slide where you had listed for a 3 kilowatts, how many units of power generation? I don't know the slide number. Yes, this one, right? Yeah. Let's keep this as reference and then take up some questions. Okay. Okay. If we are on vacation, all the power will go to the BESCOM and we'll make some money while we travel.
Yes, of course. But I am not sure whether you will keep your refrigerator on or not. So if you keep your refrigerator on, that will consume. And if you have any other lights that you keep on, for safety and security purposes, generally that will consume some power. But yes, instead of generally selling about 50 units or 100 units at the end of the month, you would be selling nearly 200 units instead. So the volume of selling just increases. But I think it's only for a short period of time unless you're going for.
Basically, it's the same logic.
Yes,
right?
you just
same logic of importing and exporting the energy. So now at present, if someone doesn't have the solar setup at home and that additional meter that you were talking about, which shows how much you have imported and how much you have exported, today if you set up that meter, all our consumption would be the import of the electricity from BESCOM. Okay. And will this be supported by an app? I mean, will I be able to see how much I uploaded today and how much I have imported today? I mean, consumed?
So net meter is something that is digital, actually generally very digital, and it shows you how much you've imported or exported during the day. Additionally, the inverter comes with a Wi-Fi option and a SIM option, Wi-Fi option, and you get the app on your phone, which shows how much you've generated. So you get all details of production, how many units you've generated throughout the day and at what time.
Okay. Including what I have consumed and what I have pushed to the grid.
That will come through the net meter, but the inverter will show you what. So you have the inverter, as I can show you here. So the inverter comes before the meter. So the inverter has the app.
Okay.
So the inverter is going to show you how much you're generating. So it's generally an inverted bell curve. So yeah, inverted U curve. So you're generating most at the afternoon. But what the BESCOM meter, net meter is going to show is how much it shows whether you've gone this way or that way. So it will show how much you've exported and imported. But it may not particularly show at what time you've imported or exported. The inverter shows the production. So because it's directly connected to the solar PV, but the net meter is connected both to the grid and the solar PV and hence may not take time into consideration.
Okay. Otherwise also if inverter app shows me how much I have generated and at the end of the month when we get the bill, I'll be able to do a tally of this much I have generated. So if the amount is deducted accordingly. Okay. Okay. Next question. Is there any loan that is available on lower interest rate for solar setup?
I'm not aware about that, but generally we do not deal with the loan side. We do not take into account the loan side because it becomes something, it's actually a sticky issue because then there's the bank into picture and we do not want to deal with the bank. So we generally say the customer can take care of it, but I do not believe there is a lower rate available for it.
Maybe you can check because bank guys, once they know that you are into it and you can get them more clients, they'll be behind you calling all the time. So it's like good thing to check, it's why not, right? If
Actually, BESCOM had a solar power subsidy until recently. But now that we are actually generating more energy and Bescom has excess power in the grid, and they're actually shutting down thermal power plants, so they do not want to give the subsidy anymore. Earlier, there was a rule that said you can install as much as solar PV anywhere you want. Now they say you have to install it on the roof or on a structure, that is a house or something like that. And additionally, you can go only up to the sanction load. So you cannot go above the sanction load. So because of the excess power factor that's happening right now, that Bescom holds excess power in the grid, they do not want to let people just install randomly and hold excess power and lose money on it.
Oh, okay. Hmm. Okay. Since you're now talking about the battery, right, in the off grid, most of us have the UPS at home. So will that become redundant, or how does your the whole setup with UPS in place works?
So when we say off grid, there is a problem then. And that is why we say go for on grid. So whatever system you hold in your house, it is not affected at all. So you can keep your UPS and the UPS will charge from your solar power itself. So when there is excess power, it's going to go to the UPS and to the load. So it's all taken care of. So in on-grid, that's the advantage. You can keep your house the way it is, the load way the way it is. You do not have to change any internal wiring at all. We connect externally through the meter. So whatever the grid can take care of, the solar PV can take care of. So your UPS, to answer your question, when it comes to on-grid, so your UPS is not at all affected by it. Actually, you're benefited by it because the UPS can be charged with solar PV. And this is what we generally recommend. We say don't go for off-grid. Why don't you go for an on-grid and also take a home UPS, which can easily be charged through the solar power.
Okay. And if at all the battery comes into place with the off grid, then how does the setup works?
So what happens when in off-grid is we have to replace the inverter. There are other retrofitting kind of systems where we use a charge controller and everything. But the problem there is that warranty is an issue, guarantee is an issue that it will work. It will work, but of course, what happens is that current from the solar PV can be too high and can damage batteries. So we generally don't recommend that. So we say replace the inverter itself for solar compatible off-grid inverter. But since as we as Lakeshorians, we don't face so much of power cuts, at least right now, I don't think most of you recognize when the power is gone. And only we realize if we switch on the iron box and then we figure out the inverter stripped. So what we recommend, go for an on-grid inverter, I mean on-grid system, and let it charge through the UPS. I mean, let the UPS charge through the solar power.
Okay. Okay. So what is the maintenance that is involved with the on-grid? I mean, do you say batteries are not involved, so it's okay, and with the inverter, it comes with a 5-year guarantee? Is that all?
The panels come with 25 years warranty. The rest of the components come with a 5-year warranty. Inverter especially comes with 5-year warranty. So that generally on-grid, the only thing you need to do, and in case of residents that we are looking at, you do not have to do much maintenance at all. There is no battery refilling of distilled water. Maybe once in a while you can just put some water on the panels. Maybe during the night you just clean up a bit if there's some dust. And that otherwise there's nothing much to take care about. Generally it's about 9 number of panels for 3 kilowatt. And you just ensure it's clean maybe once in 3-4 months. You just pour some water on it.
That's usual with our existing solar panels for heating also, the same. Okay.
Yes.
And in case of on-grid, is UPS really required? What happens if one doesn't have the UPS? Can the switch between your Bescom electricity to the generated one, the switch happens automatically?
What happens is, so the home UPS is not required unless you need a backup. So on-grid system is such that it requires a reference voltage. Solar PV always requires a reference voltage. So when you're in on-grid, the reference is from the Bescom energy, so from the grid. So if the grid is on, you're actually running on solar power. But in case the power goes off, solar power cannot be generated. So you're actually in a complete blackout then.
So you're
But
saying I can't import the electricity if there is no power.
no, if there is no power, there is no import at all.
Then it is completely disconnected.
Completely
Okay.
disconnected. So suppose you're generating and they're doing maintenance. If you supply, someone is going to be hurt. So what happens is when there is no grid, this does not work.
Okay, okay, got it. So basically you, whatever you generate, you push it to the grid, and then depending on whether you require or you don't require the required energy reroutes, thermal energy, electricity reroutes.
Yes. Primarily it goes to your house demand first,
Yeah.
and then it goes to the grid. So wherever your load is highest, it gets pulled there.
Okay. But when power goes off, we got to have the UPS setup in place
Yes.
to pick off the backup. And in this case, the UPS will be charged with the power that we have generated ourselves.
Generally, home UPS is very cheap compared to a solar off-grid inverter. And home UPS, you can use 100 Ah batteries, 150 Ah batteries, 200 Ah batteries to your requirement. But when it comes to solar off-grid inverters, there is a specific voltage that you need to reach. So we would just suggest you go for an on-grid system with a
Yeah.
small home UPS just to match maybe 1 hour of your blackout, which is very rare even now.
Right, right, right. Okay. But that doesn't change for us now, right? With or without the solar setup, my requirement of UPS, it will still remain the same, even after I have the solar setup.
Would you want to remove your home UPS? You've already invested in it, right?
In case for those who don't have it, can they manage without was the question. But looks
Okay.
like it doesn't serve that purpose.
No, if you don't have a home UPS, even now you're without, you're still, if grid goes off, you're still off. So this is the same thing.
Same continues. Okay.
If you require a small backup, go for a small home UPS.
Okay. Okay. We have another question. Can depreciation be availed if billing happens in companies? The GST saving, no? That's a big number.
Um,
If
yes, actually, if we, no, we cannot do that actually because.
Just a minute, just a minute. Hello,
yes,
hello.
please.
Siddharth, this is Govardhan. I think if your home is in the name of your company or something, then you can check with your CA. You can take the benefits.
I think as long as it's your home office, correct.
Home office, yeah. If you are registered it as an office, you can take the benefits.
And it's also there that if you claim the GST for, I think for 7 to 8 years, you got to have your setup there. I mean, that is the same for any other products for which you claim the GST in the company's name.
Same applicable. Yeah.
Same could be applicable. Okay.
Yes, yes.
And I think in Lakeshore, we do have some who have gone for the solar setup, the on-grid itself. So it would be good if they could share their experience. I think Dolly and Ashok have gone for the on-grid. I mean, I'm getting messages that people do want to hear from them about their experience of the setup and the consumption and so on.
Hi, Pavitra.
Hi, Dolly. Yes, please.
Yeah. So I'd better give it to Ashok because I use the whole thing, but Ashok has better knowledge.
Yes, please. Sure.
Yeah, hello. First of all, I think it was an excellent presentation from Siddharth. I was listening to every word of it, and I absolutely agree with what he says. I also agree that on-grid system is the way to go. But I think as far as I know, the first residents to install on-grid system 5 kilowatts are Rajul and Jitendra Pandey. In fact, when we went for it last year, we visited their house and got all the guidance. I also think, I'm fairly sure that Rav Gowda in house number 50 also installed probably 10 kilowatts or so. so we are, yeah, but this was after us. And our experience with on-grid system has been very, very positive. As Siddharth mentioned, the only maintenance that you need is basically cleaning the solar panels uh, maybe once in a couple of months or so. I also liked his point that if you have installed the panels in an elevated manner, the area below that can be used for even as a gazebo or drying clothes or some kind of roof gardening and so on. So okay, one more thing. He said that 3 kilowatts, but this need not be the upper limit. In fact, we had actually two 3 kilowatts connection, one for each floor. So what we did was we got one of the 3 kilowatts upgraded to 5 kilowatts, and then and we retained the second connection. And now most of our load is connected to the 5 kilowatts meter, and that earlier meter has been replaced by the bidirectional meter. So actually a few months ago, I had prepared a note on it, and I will resend that note with the actual gains that have accrued to us. Our bill is more or less zero for the bidirectional meter, and it's about 500 rupees or maybe 600-700 rupees for the other meter. So whatever he says about ecology and economy is I endorse it with our own personal experience. I'm very, very impressed with. So what I will do is, after this rambling, I will update my note and resend it to the entire community. Excellent presentation, Siddharth.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, Ashok, I think that
Hello.
would help. Yes.
Yeah. As usual, he snatched the phone from me. Sorry. Siddharth, my compliments to you. I met you as a kid, and you've really grown into a professional. And all my best compliments to you as a young entrepreneur. I hope you gain a lot of success and business and satisfaction as well. So, a quick question I would like to ask you is when we went for this installation, which is about a little over a year ago, sometime in August of last year, everything was smooth as far as the installation and all of that was concerned. The only bottleneck was getting a little, the sanction or the approval from the BESCOM authorities. Now, do you pitch in there to help the customer get that? Because that can be a harrowing experience. So, everything else was perfect and smooth, but this was a little bit of a heartburn issue, because unless and until you get their approval, you can have all your installations intact, but you cannot use the system.
So this is a common problem that has happened in the recent years because of the Karnataka rules changing, because the excess power here. They want you to go only up to the sanction load. So actually I have my technical associate here, Mr. Basavraj, who actually has more details on the BESCOM side, because he's dealt with the BESCOM net metering, power purchase agreement and connection side of it. So I think he can answer that slightly better. Mr. Basavraj.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you,
Basavraj.
Siddharth.
Basavraj,
Yeah.
1 minute. Just Nirupa, good afternoon. Yeah. In our case, the complete statutory issues are taken by us. It's not you. Nothing you have to do. You have to only give a sign. As Sir said, you have to sign only. Nothing
Excellent.
else. Rest is all done by us. Yeah.
You've answered the question.
Yeah,
because
that's what it says.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's a single window. As it said, nothing. You don't have to do anything except giving us one online registration.
Okay.
We do.
Great, Govardhan. That's very nice, and thanks. This question I asked.
No, it's hassle free
for the community.
Yeah.
Hello,
Thank
Siddharth.
Basavraj, you go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. Hi. This is Basavraj, technical partner for Sun Power. Hello. Hello,
Hi,
everyone.
Mr. Raj. Welcome. Please
Yeah,
do go on.
yeah, madam. So Siddharth mentioned rightly about the on-grid system and the presentation looks was really good, and I think he has covered most of the things apart from Nirupa ma'am's question. So statutory part you need not worry, ma'am, because we are taking completely as a whole. We will take care about that, and however things will need little bit time for the statutory. As you know that the TPA agreement has to go through the BESCOM officials. The BESCOM people will come to the residents and they will cross check whether everything approvals, and because it is connected to their grid, because that is why they take major precautions. So that will take about 15 days to 20 days time for that approval to come, and we are the single window. You need not worry on anything.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
Hello,
so much.
hello, Siddharth. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Siddharth and Govardhan. This is Dr. Singh. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
Excellent presentation. Lots of doubts have been cleared, and I will certainly think of putting this up in my place. Okay, after listening to Ashok and Dolly, I mean, Ashok has been sort of convinced me long back that we should go for it, but something or the other held it up. But now that we have an in-house Lakeshorian doing it, I think it would be good to get it done by our own people, and I'm sure they will look after us better than someone outsider giving us. Thank you, Siddharth. You really grown up, and thank you, Govardhan. Thank you
Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank
No
you.
problem. You can knock on our door. That's the offer also that we give.
That's good. That's good. One other question, Siddharth, is with respect to the wiring, considering because it is on grid, I believe there is no additional wiring because there are so many houses that are built like long time back, right? Maybe they have not done the required provisioning for the solar. I mean, is there any separate infra setup required? Or because it is on grid and it's all about the net meter controls, what goes and what comes, existing wiring itself will sit enough.
So what happens is this is a conventional thinking that in off-grid you can only run this lighter loads. So that time your wiring comes into play. But in on-grid it's completely external. So it goes directly to your meter. So whatever your meter is connected to it just remains connected. So if you're an older house or a newer house, it's not at all a problem. We let the wiring remain. The only thing
Yeah.
that we require generally is a space for earthing. In case you have not done, we will require one or two earthing places, and that's all that we require. That's if you have an empty small place, we can take care of that very easily. Other
But the
than that, we
existing
don't.
earthing would do, right?
Sorry.
The existing earthing that is done,
Yes.
that would do.
Yes. So
Yeah.
Excellent.
in the
Because,
bigger system, we generally require a little more space, but
okay, okay.
otherwise, no.
Because to go with any of these new things, right, the one first hurdle that you encounter is if it requires any drilling or additional wiring to be done and all those things. Once that is taken out, I think it's a lot simpler.
So the line completely runs on the outside of your building.
Got it. Okay.
So
Okay.
it's to do with internal wiring at all.
Yes, Dolly?
Yeah. See, I just like to add to what Siddharth just said from personal experience. As you were asking, Pavi, there is hardly anything that you need to do. Ours is a 22-year-old house. So we didn't have to do any retrofit, nothing. It's just the earthing just had to be beefed up a little more because of the slightly excess wattage that we were looking for. But otherwise, it was just as Siddharth said, just on the outside, and people are welcome to come and take a look at that. There was a little box that was created, little, earthing on the outer side of our garage wall. And that's it. The rest of the cabling was as is, and nothing happened to our internal cabling or wiring or switches or anything of that. So your inside of the house does not get affected at all. It gets attached to your meter, wherever the meter be located.
Thank you.
Right, that simplifies. Thank you. I think I also read most of the questions that is put on the chat. If any other questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and take it up with Siddharth. And many more have messaged me to share the recorded version, Siddharth. So I'll also be uploading it in the LSH community YouTube channel, and we'll share the video with everyone. So hopefully, you'll have more queries coming directly to you, so on. Yes, Krishna, we'll also share the contact information of Siddharth and team.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Siddharth. I mean, it is really lovely to see the next generation of LSH, showing the entrepreneurship and, especially getting into the eco-friendly so-called technologies or the industries. So wonderful, and all the very best, and see you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining on a Sunday afternoon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.